What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the stream, and today we'll be hitting up our second MLB draft with those Miami Marlins, and we'll also be taking a look at how our organization has done to this point of the year. So a little bit of future and a little bit of present. To kick us off, let's jump right into draft day. We'll have the second overall pick in this year's draft, and I am super excited. We landed a generational talent last season, and now we've got another chance to grab a franchise-altering piece. There are quite a few guys I liked, both on the mound and at the plate, but none stood out quite like the 18-year-old center fielder out of South Carolina, Boone Taylor. Now, Taylor came into the process ranked 10th by MLB.com, but during the pre-draft cycle, he shot all the way up to number 1 on our scouts board. He was tearing up showcase circuits, showing elite instincts in center field, and flashed an incredibly advanced eye at the plate for someone his age. The tools are loud, and more importantly, they're balanced. You get defense, speed, discipline, and if the bat develops like we think it can, you're talking about a top-of-the-lineup game changer. And just like that, our prayers are answered. The Astros go ahead and take second baseman Sean Saldana with the number 1 pick. That felt like a safe route for them. His floor is really high, but the ceiling seems a little capped. That opens the door for us, and no hesitation needed. With the second overall selection, the Miami Marlins select center fielder Boone Taylor. He's the real deal. The glove is already special, and the speed looks game-changing. He might be the kind of player who never hits fewer than 4 WAR if he just stays healthy. And offensively, there's some real upside. He's not a power guy right now, but with how well he sees the ball and the way his frame projects, 15 homers and 40 stolen bases isn't a crazy projection. Add in that center field defense, and you've got the foundation of something special. In the second round, I was a little torn. There were a couple arms that drew my attention, particularly Sebastian Zamora, who had a pretty polished delivery and looks like a potential innings eater. But I just couldn't shake Alexis Rosa off my board. Now listen, this is risky. We only had him about 50% scouted, and his potential range is all over the map. But what we did know is that he's got some legit raw power at the plate, and he might be an absolute vacuum at third base. He's a lefty bat, which we always like in Miami, and if his contact tools are even average, that power could really carry him. If he hits the high end of his projection, you're looking at a potential middle-of-the-order masher who also saves runs with the glove. Big swing, but if it hits, look out. Next up, we hit the competitive balance round, and by this point, the board was thinning out a bit, especially on the bump. But there was one name still sitting there that we liked from the start, Sean Bowman, the righty out of Kentucky. Bowman doesn't have any one tool that jumps off the page, but his overall profile is solid. High stamina, decent pitch grades across the board, and no major red flags. He might not be a flashy addition, but he could absolutely become a workhorse type guy who logs over 180 innings a year and keeps the bullpen fresh. We've taken some swings early, so this feels like a good time to grab some stable options. Okay, the third round was a bit of a mess. Our board got wiped out right before our pick, and the scouting room was scrambling. But even in chaos, there was excitement in the room when we landed on Fernando Santana, a reliever out of the Dominican Republic. There's not a lot of information we know on him yet, but what we do know, this dude throws straight gas. He's already flashing upwards of 98 miles an hour with a heater with some cut and movement, and his breaking ball is nasty. The control's a bit of a mystery, but if the stuff plays, we could already be looking at a second straight year with a nasty late inning reliever joining our pipeline. By this point, it was time to pivot a little. We'd gone after upside and tools, so I wanted someone with less mystery and a little bit more certainty. Enter Frank. Yes, that is actually his name, and I'm really hoping he breaks through the majors so I can say it a lot of times in this series. He's a college righty out of California, and he's a pretty finished product. The potential is basically locked in at a B, which is great value in the 4th. He's got a decent projected possible ceiling, but it's really the starting attributes that we're most worried about. If he comes in with a decent overall, he could rise quickly through our system and give us some reliable depth in our rotation. He reminds me of a guy who can quietly put up solid numbers in AA and force his way into the conversation in the future when injuries hit. The run on pitching would continue in round 5, and this time we went to the left side of the bullpen with Ken Rodriguez. Now, Rodriguez doesn't quite have Santana's upside, but there's still a lot to like. He's got a tight, late-breaking sweeper that tunnels well off of his fastball, which sits in the 94 to 95 range. If the control holds up and the arm stays healthy, this is a guy who could move fast and could be one of those sneaky, low-cost bullpen wins. With our final selection of the draft, we turned our attention to catching depth. Peter Fishman isn't flashy, he's not going to light up the stat sheet, but he does bring some defensive competence behind the plate, which is something you never have too much of in your system. I don't expect him to make a huge impact for us, but he's a guy who could anchor innings in the lower levels and support pitcher development, which is all a key part of the building a sustainable system. All in all, I'm pretty pleased with how this one shook out. We got our guy, Boone Taylor, at the top, and I genuinely think he's the kind of prospect you can build an identity around, especially with having Enrique Reyna drafted last season. His presence alone gives this class an incredible floor. Beyond that, we were methodical, grabbing value where the board allowed and taking a couple of big swings where it made sense. The ceiling of this draft is probably going to come down to what Alexis Rosa turns out to be. But even if that doesn't quite work out, we still added a potential center field anchor and a couple solid bullpen arms, and some useful organizational depth. It might not be quite the fireworks show we pulled off last year, but this group could fit the puzzle we are building in Miami. With the draft in the books, another crop of talent is headed to the farm. So let's take a step back and check in on how the big league club is doing at the halfway mark of the 2026 season. Unfortunately, not great. We sit at 40-56, which, let's be honest, is about what we expected. I was hoping we'd show just a little bit more growth by this point, but not to be. The NL East is running away from us. We're already 21 games back in the division. And it's been a pretty funky season from a health perspective. At least 3 hitters have broken their hands between the major leagues and AAA, and those injuries kind of set us back in the standings a bit. The good news, though, is we're finally healthy again, and over the last 10 games, we've started to click, winning 8 out of 10. So maybe we're finally turning the corner. Let's dig into some of the key performances, starting with the hitters. Xavier Edwards has been our clear MVP for the second straight season. At one point, he was hitting over 350, but even with a bit of cooling off, he's still sitting at 313 with an excellent 412 on-base percentage. The pop has leveled out a little bit, but he's doing damage on the bases, already swiping 24 bags, and just continues to be a spark plug in our lineup. Jared Cernan was thrown into the fire thanks to the injury bug hitting us, and while the numbers aren't jaw-dropping, he's more than held his own with a 747 OPS. I'd love to see a little more patience at the plate, but the foundation is solid. Connor Norby has been a mixed bag. The batting average and walk rate have taken a step back from last year, but he's slugging .496 with a .263 ISO, so the power has been there in big ways. All things considered, I'm pretty pleased. Agustin Ramirez is still settling into MLB life. The walk rate is concerned, and the power is playing decently. I think more consistency will come with time. As for Cedric Mullins, he was one of our broken hand guys. So far, he's been what we expected, though. Decent pop, minimal walks, and just 9 steals. But now that he's healthy, we'll see if we can get the running game going again. Jonah Bride is getting on base at a solid clip with a .339 on-base percentage, but for a guy in the DH role, I still need more slugging out of him. If the right offer comes along at the deadline this season, I'm going to be listening for him. Joe Mack is starting to heat up. His season-long numbers are modest, but he's slugging .733 over his last 10 games. The power still needs to tick up long-term, but he's tracking well. Otto Lopez has quietly bounced back. He's now batting .278 with a little bit more pop than I expected. His trade value might be peaking, so he's a name we're definitely monitoring heading into the deadline. On the flip side, Jake Fraley has been a major letdown. He's only hitting .226, and he's not even producing against righties, which is literally his only job. We're kind of stuck with him right now, but his leash is severely shortening. Nelson Velasquez has only 77 plate appearances because of, you guessed it, a broken hand. But he's made the most of it. 9 home runs already and a .1205 OPS. He's certainly earned more at-bats going forward, without a question. Dylan Carlson has been useful, especially against lefties, and I could definitely see a contending team targeting him for a deadline move. Kyle Stowers, unfortunately, has kind of completely fallen apart. His power is gone, the average is ugly, and we may be heading towards a non-tender situation with him. Now for the pitching staff, we'll kick it off with Andrew Nardi, who was a huge early season loss with a torn labrum. This one kind of stung because we were hoping he'd be a major piece in our bullpen moving forward, so he's going to have to rehab and come back strong next season. But Yuri Perez is trending the right direction. His season started kind of rocky, but over his last 10 starts, he is cooking with a 2.80 ERA and a sub-1 whip. That's the ace-type stuff we're banking on. Walker Buehler has also been really steady with a 3.53 ERA. He's not dominant, but he's giving us quality outings, and with 1 year left on his deal after this season, he'll be a hot name at the trade deadline. Ryan Pepiot, on the other hand, has been a frustrating one. His ERA is pushing 6 with a whip through the roof, but his FIP is okay. The bigger concern is his strikeouts per 9 is only 7.6. That's really not cutting it for a guy we traded away Sandy Alcantara for. Max Meyer is also struggling with a near 6 ERA, but unlike Pepiot, his peripherals don't offer much encouragement. He'll keep starting, but we really need to see a turnaround from him. Braxton Garrett, meanwhile, has been quietly excellent. He's got a 2.64 ERA with an elite walk rate, and he's keeping hitters off base. Great to see him bounce back and be healthy after some pretty extended injury time that he missed. Aiden May is likely maxed out developmentally, so what we're seeing in a 4.12 ERA is not the greatest. Good strikeout numbers, but a lot of traffic on the base paths. He probably is who he is, so I guess we might just have to accept that. In the pen, Jose Leclerc is doing typical Jose Leclerc things. High strikeouts, shaky command. He may not fetch a huge return at the deadline, but somebody might bite. Edward Cabrera's bullpen transition has not worked out for us. A 6.5 based on balls per 9 is brutal. It's even higher than when he was a starter. But the strikeouts are elite, and the FIP says that he's been a little unlucky. Still, we expected more out of him. Ronnie Enriquez, on the other hand, has performed quite well, but he may be kind of outshooting his actual talent right now. Even with some regression on the way, I see the development as being real, so it's a name to watch going forward. Ryan Weathers has been a bright spot in the bullpen, solid peripherals, and filling a big need with Andrew Nardi out. Anthony Bender, on the other hand, hasn't done much to separate himself. Was hoping he could be a trade candidate when we first kicked off this franchise, and he's given some decent results, but his low strikeout numbers are nothing pie-popping, and I don't think teams are going to be really that interested in him. Declan Cronin continues to be a mystery box. His strikeout and base on ball rates are fantastic, but he still doesn't feel like a long-term piece. That being said, I think there's some teams that are bullpen needy that would be interested in him if we dangled him at the trade deadline. Now, while the MLB club might be scuffling through a rebuilding year, the farm system continues to be one of our biggest reasons for optimism. Let's start out on the hitting side, taking a look at Maximo Acosta, who's been incredibly steady at AAA this year, hitting .291 with an on-base percentage of .354. He's just doing about everything we ask of him. Power isn't really a big part of his game, but I'd like to see a little bit higher than an .082. But he's a true table setter and should be absolutely get a call up to the majors once we move some pieces at the trade deadline. Theo Gillen has run into some expected growing pains in his first taste of AAA at 20 years old. The 206 average and 269 on base percentage don't look great on the surface, but he's still managing over a 200 ISO, showing off some of the loud contact and plenty of raw juice that we expect out of him. His development curve remains solid, so no long-term concerns here quite yet. Down in AA, Starlin Caba has flat out raked. 300 batting average and a 385 on base percentage, and a steady 775 on OPS, showing just how advanced his feel for the game is. Power's still coming along, but when you're walking and hitting like this at 20 years old, I think your ceiling is enormously high. Joining him in AA is our first-round draft pick from last year, Enrique Reyna. He's taken no time to adjust, slashing 270, 331, 467. With nearly a 200 ISO in his debut season, he's been fantastic. Just no other way to say it. Carter Johnson has been a bit quieter than expected, especially in the slugging department. He's still holding a solid 716 OPS and looks strong everywhere else, but he needs to start driving the ball with a little bit more authority if he wants to climb quickly up our system. On the mound, the arms are just as exciting. Thomas White has been dominant in AAA with a 3.27 ERA and 9.4 strikeouts per 9. The command is holding steady and the stuff looks electric. He's doing everything you want to see from a top pitching prospect, and he's probably going to see himself in the majors before the end of the season. Noble Meyer, meanwhile, hasn't quite hit his stride. His ERA is up at 4.56 and he's under 8 strikeouts per 9, which is below his usual standard. Hopefully it's just a temporary blip in the radar, but worth monitoring given his pedigree and the expectations we have for him. Robbie Snelling has stepped up big time after getting pushed into AAA. ERA sitting at a solid 3.26, and while the peripherals aren't all filled in here, the eye test and development trajectory are holding its own and then some. And finally, Thomas Fagan. This kid has been absolutely tearing up AA. A 3.89 ERA doesn't tell the whole story because he's striking out over 12 hitters per 9 and he's barely walking anyone. At this pace, we might be looking at a late season debut if all things align. And that's all I got for you in this one. MLB team might be struggling, but I think we're doing some good stuff behind the scenes in developing our young talent and our top prospects. The next episode is going to be the trade deadline. Of course, one of my favorites. The second year may be even more of a banger than the first year. But in the meantime, between time, I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'm gone. Deuces.